New Zealanders and Aussies have a famous rivalry over claiming different actors, over sports, over food. Pavlova, ringing any bells? But something we can agree on is a love of beer. And yes, you Kiwis make excellent New World lagers. This right here is a New Zealand New World Pilsner and it is mind-blowingly good. So we're gonna show you right now exactly how we made it. To make this New Zealand New World Pilsner, it's pretty simple. We need to be using New Zealand ingredients, and because it's a Pilsner, the base of this is going to be Pilsner malt. So in this case, we are going to be running with 90% of our grain bill being Gladfield's Pilsner malt, which is one of the bigger maltsters going around in Kiwi land. But the other 10%, we're going to be throwing in Vienna malt. Now in this case, it's going to again be Gladfield Vienna malt, which means we're still sticking within the rules of keeping everything Kiwi, but it also means we're going to have a little more body, mouthfeel, a little more complexity in our final product. Because whilst we want this to be fresh and fruity, I've learned very well from the Germans that things like a Helles Lager are so delicious because they have that little bit of maltiness balancing out all the freshness. So a 90-10 ratio between the Pilsner and the Vienna malt goes into the grain mill. We're stuck. My grain mill's stuck, bro. He doesn't want to roll. Oh no, we've got problems, bro.
Beach this, bro.
Yes, bro! Right, let's mash in, bro. The night is dark and full of terrors, unless you have this. Flying Wombat limited edition cigar lighter, available right now on our website, theflyingwombat.com.au for a limited time only. Now, just before we mash in, we need to adjust our water chemistry. I have 3 mils of phosphoric acid here that's going to adjust our pH before we throw in our grains. And then our water profile will be 24 parts per million of calcium, 5 parts per million of magnesium, 15 sodium, 31 chloride, 36 sulfate, and 57 parts per million of bicarbonate. If you don't know how to work water chemistry or water salts, there's a link to a video up there that does a full explainer on how to start playing with water chemistry and adjusting your salt profile. Now, we can start mashing in with this grain. And that's basically just a balanced lager profile, by the way. It's nothing super out of the ordinary. It's just about keeping everything relatively light and even, because we want the malts and the hops to really shine. It's not about having hard water on this one. I intentionally want to keep it quite soft. Paint mixer for the win. It's a lot easier than a mash paddle. Highly recommend that you get one. Now is as good a time as any to talk about what this beer is actually supposed to be. So the basis of it is kind of a Czech style Pilsner, but where it starts to become New World and specifically New Zealand is not only that all the ingredients we're using are going to be from Kiwi land, but it's also in the New World style. So where a Czech Pilsner is going to focus more on herbal flavors or floral characteristics coming from the hops, from that more noble realm, this is going to be focused far more fruit forward. So we're going to have a lot of passion fruit, tropical flavors and aromas. We're going to have a lot of citrusy sweetness. It's going to push this more into the realms of Nipah-esque hop styles, but in a Pilsner setting. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. Anyway, let's finish mashing in. All right, that is mashing just about done. Now we're gonna let this sit for 1 hour at 65 degrees Celsius, which is gonna keep our beer on the lighter, fresher side of things. The goal is for this to finish around 5.5% ABV, so on the slightly higher side in terms of Pilsners. And I also do need to apologize to you for the shoddy, shaky camera work, because unlike with the cold IPA, link up there, Odin is actually here today and filming. Decided to show up this time. Now we'll see you guys at the end of an hour where we'll start sparging. It is now time to start sparging. So if you're unfamiliar with this process or you're new to these videos, what this essentially is running extra hot water over the top of the grain bed, because whilst all the liquid is draining out of our grains, there's still gonna be a bunch of residual sugars that are just trapped in all the coating of the grains. So by running this hot water over top, we're improving our efficiency and getting more sugars out of this so that we can get more beer for our buck. Now, this is 30 liters of sparge water, which I think is 7.9 gallons, and it was the same for the strike water, which we forgot to mention earlier. We're gonna rinse and repeat this until it's done, and then it's time to move on to boiling. We are now at just about boiling. Well, I just actually had to kill the elements because we almost had a boil over. So let's get that ramping up again and take a little pre-boil gravity sample. Now, while I wait for that to temperature adjust and just cool down a smidge, remember to go down to the bottom of this recording and hit like and subscribe if you enjoy the content that we produce on this channel, and ding that notification bell so that you're the first to be notified when we drop our new video every single week. Now, the pre-boil gravity is 1.05 on the nose. I can't remember what the target was for this one, but I suspect we're over it because I think after boiling, this will finish around 1.055. Might be pushing 6% depending on how dry this one finishes out, but we'll see. I'm not super fussed about the ABV on this one. I'm chasing flavor, not numbers. And speaking of chasing flavor, you can see more behind the scenes cuts and edits in our Patreon in the link down below if you are so inclined. Hops time. We need to add our 1 ounce / 28 grams of Motueka hops. This is going to give us 11.2 IBUs, and we'll have more IBUs coming towards the end of the boil, but this is a part of our first set of Kiwi hops that is going to make this a New World New Zealand Pilsner. If my scissors work. Terrible. Anyway, in they go with the hop spider before I forget. Rightio, start your clocks, come back at the end of the hour, and then we'll add our flavor and aroma hops. We now have 5 minutes left to go in this boil, so it is time to add our final hop addition. Now, before we go throwing it in, I highly recommend getting a vacuum sealer. I've done a terrible job of vacuum sealing this particular batch, but it is excellent at retaining hop character, flavor, and aroma, especially when you're storing it for long term, or when you need to prep your hops early before a brew day. And that's a part of our bunch of things that every home brewer should own. Now, this addition is going to be 70 grams / 2.5 ounces each of Motueka, Nelson Sauvin, and Riwaka, which are all fantastic New Zealand hop varietals. So this is going to give us a big punch of citrus, fruity character, a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of spiciness, and a whole lot of awesome hoppiness. In that goes, this is going to sit for another 5 minutes left in the remainder of this boil. I'll stir it like a witch's cauldron. There we go. That's hot. That's very hot. And then we are going to come back to start cooling this thing down to yeast pitching temperature. Done with boiling, and we are starting to cool down. We are going to be using, and I forgot to open the valve again, we are going to be using the plate chiller, which means that we're going to have the wort flowing in hot against the outflow of the cooling water, hence counterflow chilling our wort as we get it down to yeast pitching temperature. Now, the yeast we want to use for this one, this is where things got a little bit tricky. I couldn't really identify a native New Zealand strain of yeast because beer, it came over there. New Zealand's a relatively young country, so I don't think there was any definitive Kiwi yeast, but I do know that the Saff Lager strains are used quite extensively over there, not just by home brewers, but also by their actual commercial brewers. So I'm going to be running with S23. I was considering W34/70, but S23, in my experience, just has some really nice estery fruity notes that complement New World styles of Pilsner really nicely. So I think that's gonna be the finishing touch on what is gonna be an extremely Kiwi beer brew. So once this is cooled down enough, we can throw that yeast in and then start tasting some good beer. It is now finally time to transfer because it is 41 degrees Celsius today, which is over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Water that we're using to actually cool everything down can only get things so cold. So that means we're gonna be relying on the cooling system here and the glycol chiller over on my left to actually get us down to 14 degrees C, which will be our yeast pitching temperature. Odin, do the honors and pull the lever, Kronk. Wrong lever. And there's the money shot. Done. Now, once this is cold enough, we'll pitch some yeast and then sit back and wait. we are now ready to pitch our yeast. So we're gonna be running with 3 packets of S23 as mentioned. This is gonna be like, S23 is a workhorse. Like it's a pretty clean fermenting lager yeast. It does have subtle fruity estery characters, which is nice. And I think all of that is gonna complement really well with the hops that we've added. So I think it's a good enough combo to make all this work together, and SAF Lager is a very, very popular yeast amongst commercial brewers and home brewers, as I mentioned before. So that is that. Now that that pitch is done, I'm gonna close up the fermenter and let it start working. I'm gonna ferment at 14 degrees Celsius. I estimate it'll take about 2 weeks of primary fermentation. Then I'll do a diacetyl rest followed by cold crashing. After all of that, you'll be seeing me with a fresh cold pint of beer. And here she is. Now, I've got to say, I have really grown to just enjoy and love lagers over the last couple years. I think as a brewer, you follow this weird curve where you're trying to produce the most balls to the walls IPAs, the most hectic hoppy stuff, the most intense pastry stouts. And then eventually you come full circle and you find the true appreciation for a very well-constructed lager. And that's what this is. This right here is delicious. So the malt body is light and subdued, but it's present enough to kind of give you a little bit of breadiness, a little bit of just generic maltiness, and it holds together the balance of the body of the beer really, really well. But the hops are honestly where it counts. This thing is just unique. New Zealand hops are really, really something special. Like they have flavors and aromas you just don't get with anything else. Like in this one right here, I'm getting like a lot of like lime zest, like not a mojito, like a margarita. I get a whole bunch of lime zest. I get a bunch of like acidity and citrus, more towards like lemon and lime rather than like grapefruit in the traditional IPA. And then there's this rolling wave of, I can't put my finger on it, but generic white wine characteristics, like the fruity characteristics that a Sauv Blanc has, and the citrus and the acidity to it. That's what I get in this beer. It is really something truly special. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and join us for next week's video. Cheers guys, catch you then.